Welcome to Soul Care Astrology, the podcast that helps you turn to the moon, stars, and Mother Nature for guidance in planning your days and finding your way home to yourself. I'm your host, Sarah McCormick, the astrologer behind Soul Care Astrology and the creator of the Soul Care Planner. Hi everyone. Today we are taking a look at the astrology of November 2025. And as always, this is just a brief overview of the cosmic energies for the month ahead. And if you want a deeper dive with me, come join me in the Soul Care community. The link is in the show notes. Also, be sure to stay to the end where I give horoscopes for the month ahead for each rising sign. So, November has a lot happening. It's a very intense month. It's uncertain. It's very foggy. And at the same time, there's a theme of really getting in touch with our emotions. There's a theme of transformation. But there's just a lot up in the air and kind of pulling back a little. It's unfortunately probably going to feel like this, where there's a lot kind of up in the air. There's a lot unknown. There's a lot of uncertainty through the end of January of 2026. And a lot of that has to do with last month on October 22nd. Neptune retrograded back into Pisces. And on December 10th, Neptune will station direct at 29 degrees Pisces, where Neptune will be in Pisces until January 26th of next year. And when anything is sitting at 29 degrees, which is the anaretic degree, it's the last degree of a zodiac sign, it can be very intense. And so Neptune is going to be sitting at 29 degrees of Pisces, basically now through the end of next January. And as I mentioned in last month's forecast, Neptune in Pisces can really bring about this sense of spiritual dogma, of using beliefs or religion against others, of being like, I'm right and anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. It can also bring about the need or the desire to stick one's head in the sand, to not pay attention to reality, to put blinders on, of kind of ignoring anything that's like not in that person's immediate bubble. And there can be a lot of issues that come up with this. And Uranus is going to play its part as well, because Uranus is also currently retrograde, and it's going to be retrograding back into Taurus on November 7th is when that will happen, and it'll be sitting at 29 degrees of Taurus. So we'll have these two planets, both at these anaretic degrees, the last degree of Taurus and Pisces. So Uranus will be at 29 degrees Taurus, Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces. And then on top of it, Uranus and Neptune are going to interact with each other later this month, which I will talk more about when we get there. But overall, this just adds a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion. It can even lend itself to feelings of disillusionment, making it harder to kind of find motivation, to find, I don't want to say a sense of hope, but it can just, we can all feel very uncertain. And I will talk more about that as we get closer to that date. But since I kind of started off this forecast with some really intense outlooks, I do want to begin looking more granularly at November with November 3rd with Mars trine Neptune, because this, if you're like, oh no, November is just going to be an awful month. No, it is not. There's just an energy kind of clouding or flavoring November, but we do have some wonderful bright spots within the month. And one of those is November 3rd, Mars trine Neptune. Mars is our action, it's our willpower, it is our motivation and our passion. Neptune, while yes, a lot of this month I'm talking about Neptune being confusion and disillusionment, it is also creativity and intuition. And so with Mars trine Neptune, we get a boost to our creativity. And it's a really wonderful time for trying out new hobbies, trying out new artistic mediums. This transit is somewhat rare, and it helps us take action towards our hopes and dreams, both personal and community-based. On November 5th, we will have our full moon in Taurus. So Taurus energy asks us to slow down, to remember to look around ourselves, to take in the world around us. So this full moon is really going to give us space to ground and feel a little more steady on our feet. So Taurus energy, I always think of Taurus as knowing that the tortoise beat the hare for a reason, and that the steady and sustained approach is the best approach we can take. So this full moon will help illuminate where you have been cutting corners and show you how to build a stable foundation. There's also this theme with this full moon about what is mine versus what is yours, especially around resources and money. And so there can be some scarcity-based thinking around not having enough resources or not having control over resources. So it's really important to slow down before making any decisions. On November 9th, Mercury retrograde will begin. This is another thing kind of adding to that maybe unsteady, unstable feeling this month of just like another thing that is kind of pulling our attention. Like, I kind of feel like this month, at first I was thinking it's like a rocky ocean, but the more I'm kind of sitting with it, the more it almost feels like you're in the kitchen at the stove cooking, and there's multiple pots, multiple pans you're having to like pay attention to and tend to. And that's kind of the feeling I'm getting for this month with the energetic degrees, with Neptune and Uranus and Mercury retrograde, is more that our attention is being pulled in all these different directions. And of course, they have done studies that very beautifully illustrate that our brains don't work as well when we are trying to split our attention, and that we really need to focus on one thing at a time. And this month, it may be harder to do that. It may feel like there's a lot happening around us that's kind of pulling at us and tugging at us. And I really think, as I'm kind of diving into this energy, like with my body, that it'll be really important to carve out time for yourself. And this kind of full moon in Taurus, to me, I feel like kind of echoes that we can get in our head about, oh, I don't have time for that. Oh, I don't have time for that. Especially, when life gets busy, maybe there's health issues coming up, or maybe your calendar is full and there's a lot of appointments, or maybe there's a lot of people demanding more of your time. Whatever it is, it can be really easy to let our nervous system take over our body and kind of push us into that scarcity mindset of I don't have enough time to pause and take care of myself. And I know what I'm about to say is hard because it's hard for me too. You're not alone, but you do have time. You can, before you walk in a room, you can pause and put your hand over your heart, maybe a hand on your heart and one on your belly, and just take a deep breath. And do that, 2 or 3 times. A really high quality deep breath to just let your body know it's safe, to let your nervous system know that it is safe. You can take 5 minutes in the morning to do some simple flowing. It doesn't have to be stretches, but just moving your body, getting into your body, seeing what feels sticky or what's tight, of what's calling to you, like what do you need? Sometimes I go to stretch and I'm like between my shoulder blades, like that needs, I want that to open up. We sit at our desk all day and kind of our shoulders round. And so it often feels really good to connect with that back part of our body to between our shoulder blades and let our shoulder blades pull back and just have a little moment to breathe while we're kind of moving in our body and seeing what our body needs. There is time for these like micro moments of checking in. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to go drive to like an hour-long yoga class to have self-care or to slow down or to remind your nervous system that it's safe. It's these little micro moments. That's where we really get to do the work. And I don't know, I feel like I will probably do a whole nother podcast on this because as I'm talking about it, I really feel like it's important for November. But I do really want to emphasize the idea that don't listen to your mind or your very active nervous system when it tells you you don't have time to just, take a few quality deep breaths or to like stretch out your upper back and your shoulders and your neck. Whatever it is you need to do to help bring your nervous system down like a step or two, you do have time for that, I promise. So sorry for the tangent that just kind of came through, but I get the sense that when November 9th, when Mercury retrograde begins, we're all going to be feeling this Mercury retrograde. And this, Mercury retrograde gets a bad rap. There's always all these memes and posts and like sometimes even astrologers I see are the ones doing it where they fuel this fear. Mercury retrograde is like horrible and you should be afraid and like there's all these things you quote unquote can't do. And especially right now, the way I feel like a lot of us are feeling, or we're stressed, we're anxious, we're burnt out, like we're just tired. And when we are scrolling social media and you see all these negative things about Mercury retrograde, it just activates your nervous system, right? And so I promise you, you do not need to fear Mercury retrograde. Yes, can it feel, I'm trying to find a different word than what I've used already here, like things are moving quickly and you have to react quickly because you feel like you can't. It's almost like trying to grab at sand, pretend sand is just pouring from the sky and you're trying to like grab at the sand. Like that's how sometimes Mercury can feel. If you know your Roman mythology, let's take a step back. So if you know your Roman mythology, you are familiar with the god Mercury. If you don't know Roman mythology, that's fine. I'm going to give you a very brief overview. Mercury was the messenger god, able to go between worlds at will. So the overworld and the underworld. Most gods could not go to the underworld. Pluto, or you might know him in Greek mythology, Hades, ruled the underworld. But Mercury went between the two and was like the go-between between the gods. And Mercury, that kind of mythology, that mythos, translated over to Mercury, the planet, to some degree. And that Mercury is able to go between the worlds. And so when Mercury is retrograde, it kind of is Mercury, it's like Mercury going into the underworld. It is our way of turning in, and instead of focusing that communication outward to others, we are instead turning within and focusing that communication with ourselves. And so this is why when Mercury retrograde happens, it can feel like our communications are going haywire because we're still trying to focus our communications outward when the energy wants us to go inward. So Mercury retrograde, in my experience, is a wonderful time to deepen or start a meditation practice, to work with any kind of divination practice such as tarot or oracle or pendulum. There's lots of other different practices. It is a time to connect to your intuition. It is a time to go within and get clear on your own internal landscape, your own internal underworld of your motivations, your desires, what you want. And then when the retrograde ends, that's when you kind of can turn back outward again with your communication and communicate to others what you learned. On November 17th, the sun will make a trine to Jupiter, and it will also trine Saturn. So Sun trine Jupiter is just a beautiful transit. It helps us feel optimistic and very much like we are able to grow and reach for our dreams. It's a very hopeful transit. And then the Sun trine Saturn kind of adds some groundedness to that. It helps us look towards the future, but it kind of tempers, there we go, tempers that Sun trine Jupiter a little bit. So we're not kind of blinded by our rose-colored glasses. We can see things from a little bit more realistic point of view. And so these two transits together are really beautiful if you want to take some time to make some goals for the rest of the year. November 20th is a big day. There's a lot happening. First up, we have the Sun conjunct Mercury. And this is a transit that when it occurs in the Mercury retrograde cycle, it is often kind of talked about as being like the quote unquote one day you can outwardly communicate during Mercury retrograde and have it go the best as it can go during Mercury retrograde. So you often see astrologers talk about if you need to announce something or launch something or travel or have an event, do it on the Sun conjunct Mercury day. And I'm talking about if you have to do something during Mercury retrograde. Personally, I don't know if I follow the same train of thought. I do think it helps our minds be a little bit more clear. It's almost like the sun peeking through the clouds on a cloudy day. But I do think Mercury retrograde is really just a time that we need to go inward and and just leave it at that. The same day, November 20th, we have our new moon in Scorpio. So a new moon in Scorpio is all about transformation. So what are you ready to transmute? What are you ready to transform? What are you ready to evolve into? Those are the things I want you to be thinking about for this new moon. The same day, we have Uranus sextile Neptune, which is the transit I was talking about at the top of this podcast, where I said, we have Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus, we have Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces, and they're going to interact together. This is that transit. And this is a more rare transit. This is the second of a series of 5 sextiles that Uranus and Neptune are making through June of 2027. This transit has not occurred since 1968, just to give you an idea. So this transit is kind of flavoring our next 2 years. And this transit is really echoing what I talked about with Neptune and my cautiousness with Neptune being in Pisces until the end of January of 2026. So yes, this transit can spark our curiosity about spiritual and philosophical matters. This can be a time of creativity, of invention, of connecting with others. But the sticky point is that Neptune can bring about spiritual bypassing of cult mentality. And we have seen a rise of this in the United States, especially it's been happening for the past few years, but especially this past year. And it can have, it can bring an energy of like those that believe the same as me are right, or they're better than everyone else. Like everyone who doesn't believe the same as me is below me. They are different. They are alien. And, Uranus sextile Neptune can also increase our desire to stay in like a little mental bubble, or to linger in toxic positivity, to pull the wool over our own eyes. And, this just means people turn away, or they are blinded by the realities of the world around them, which is, I feel like, especially important given the current political climate, with things like aid being withheld in Gaza and the authority that ICE is being given to just kind of abduct folks without due process. And there's many other examples of this that I could talk about right now. You know what I'm talking about. And so, unfortunately, I never like to make predictions with astrology, right? That's not what astrology is for. Astrology is to tell us the energy we are working with. But unfortunately, I feel like we're going to get more of the same right now. And it can be disheartening. It can be defeating. It can, really just suck. So that is why, again, I say it is super important to remind yourself you do have time to do those little mini things that ground you, that help your nervous system just take a step or two down, to feel safe, to feel calm, to feel centered. Because that's what we need, right? We need to take care of ourselves. Again, going back to that tortoise and the hare situation, we are the tortoise right now. We know this is a long game. We know that slow and steady wins the race. But for us to be able to stay in the race, we have to take care of ourselves. So that's really important. On November 22nd, Mercury will make a trine to Jupiter. This transit is great for socializing, for catching up with friends and family, for just kind of hanging out. We kind of have an echo of that transit on the 24th with Mercury conjunct Venus, which is again another day that's really great for being with people who get you and just gathering with others. On the 26th of November, Venus will make a trine to Jupiter, which really boosts our sense of optimism, of abundance, of luck, which we probably all need by this point in the month. But then on November 29th, we get a little bit of cosmic support because Mercury retrograde ends. So if you've had Mercury retrograde issues pop up around communication or travel or technology, they won't completely come to a stop now, but they will ease up over the next couple of weeks. And then we wrap up the month on November 30th with Venus making a trine to Neptune, which again can be really lovely for socialization and gathering with others, but it's also a really lovely time for just tuning within with yourself, kind of letting your mind wander, daydream, kind of giving your mind a break as much as possible from just like the stress of like holding everything. So whatever you can do, even if it's just 10 or 20 minutes to just like let go of your worries, the astrology will support you on the 30th for doing just that. And now if you've made it this far, thank you. I am going to do something a little different this month that I typically don't do, which is do very brief horoscopes for your month. And this is for your rising sign. So Aries, for you, this month is all about transformation and your sense of personal power. So this month is great for therapy, for shadow work, for anything that helps clear the cobwebs out of your mental closet. Taurus, this month is about your relationships, both romantic and platonic. So for you, what's going to be highlighted are things like boundaries, codependency, how you communicate within those relationships. Gemini, this month is a time when your work-life balance is highlighted, and you could find it beneficial to examine your daily routine for energy leaks. Cancer, you are going to want to kind of dive into your creativity this month, and you'll probably find that you're a little bit more spontaneous, especially regarding play and pleasure. Leo, for you this month, you are focusing on home and family and creating a safe, nurturing nest. You may feel like you want to put down roots or focus on connecting to your ancestors. Virgo, this is a time to make new connections, to connect with old friends, to network, and to collaborate with others. This is an important time for you to speak up and use your voice. Libra, this month is a time for you to focus on security, what helps you feel safe and comfortable, and what you value. Scorpio, this is a time where you are gaining a clearer understanding of who you are. You're kind of ready to move on from the past and discover new depths of yourself. Sagittarius, this is a time where you may feel like retreating from the world and spend more time alone. So use this time to reflect and kind of think about like what's happened this year and feel like go ahead and like let yourself dream of the year ahead and give yourself time to refill your cup. Capricorn, for this month, your focus is shifting to your community and your friends. So gatherings and groups are really important to you now, and you probably feel a little bit more social. Aquarius, this next month is the best time of year to move forward in your career. So recognition and responsibility go hand in hand for you right now. And Pisces, for the next month, you are going to want to lean towards adventure, to seek out new experiences. This could be travel, learning, picking up new hobbies, or exploring your spirituality. So I hope this was a helpful overview, and I really hope to see you soon in the soul care community. Until next time. Love today's episode? Be sure to subscribe and leave me a rating or review in your favorite podcast app. It will help me create even more episodes you will love. And for everything else that you might need to find your own path with the guidance of the stars, visit soulcareastrology.com.